In Britain's distant past, the forests and shores of the UK were once teeming with exotic animals like majestic cave lions, roaming brown bears, migrating grey whales, and packs of elusive wolves. These incredible creatures once called the British Isles home, but now they're just a memory. These species, among hundreds of others, paints a vibrant picture of Britain's natural history. Here, we will uncover the fascinating stories of 10 extinct animals of the UK, discover how they lived, what led to their disappearance, and the lasting impact they left on the landscape. Several factors have contributed to the extinction of many of the UK's animals over the last few thousand years. These include climate change, habitat loss, human hunting, and competition with domestic animals. Here's a detailed look at the primary causes. 1. Climate change. As the climate warmed following the last glacial maximum around 11,600 years ago, the extensive ice sheets that covered much of the UK melted, leading to the formation of new habitats such as forests, wetlands, and grasslands. These changes meant that the species adapted to colder climates and glacial environments lost their habitats. 2. Habitat loss. Human activity, particularly deforestation and agricultural expansion, has drastically altered the natural landscape of the UK. Forests and wetlands, which provided essential habitats for many species, were cleared for farming and settlements, leading to the loss of crucial ecosystems. 3. Human hunting. People of Britain hunted many animals, particularly large mammals, to extinction for a variety of reasons, including the need for food, fur, and tools, as well as for sport. Additionally, fear and concerns for safety played significant roles in the overhunting of species that were perceived as threats to human life, settlements, and livestock. 4. Introduction of domestic animals and competition. The introduction of domesticated animals and farming practices brought competition for resources. Domestic livestock often outcompeted wild herbivores for grazing land. Additionally, domestic animals sometimes brought diseases that affected wild populations. 5. Pollution and environmental changes. Industrialization brought pollution and changes in land use, further stressing wildlife populations. Wetlands were drained, rivers were polluted, and natural areas were increasingly fragmented by roads and urban development. It's important to note that for most of its history, the British Isles were part of the main continent of Eurasia, linked by the region now known as Doggerland. Throughout the Pleistocene, also known as the Ice Age, which began about 2.6 million years ago and ended 11,700 years ago, the climate alternated between cold glacial periods, including times when the climate was too cold to support much fauna, which is why a lot of animals disappeared in this time frame, as Britain has always been an ever-changing landscape. Now, let's look into the fascinating history of extinct animals in the UK, ranging from those that disappeared thousands of years ago to those that have vanished in more recent times. 1. Brown bears. Before the Ice Age, the brown bear was once widespread across Britain, found in the wild from Devon in southern England to Sutherland in northern Scotland. Brown bears would have been feeding on a range of large mammals including deer and bison, while eating berries, roots, and plants during leaner times. Brown bears weigh anywhere from 80 to 600 kilograms, with males outweighing females. Today, they are often considered to be the world's largest carnivore. It is calculated there were over 13,000 bears in Britain 7,000 years ago. However, by the end of the last Ice Age, populations had dwindled and it had become rare. After the Ice Age, numbers started to decline and were mostly only found in England, such as Yorkshire and in the east and south of England. There appear to have been more bears in Roman Britain from 43 to 410 AD, suggesting they were imported from continental Europe, likely used in entertainment, including bear dancing and baiting, a blood sport in which a chained bear and one or more dogs, usually English bulldogs, are forced to fight one another, which continued well into the 19th century. Henry VIII was even a fan of bear baiting, and had a bear pit constructed at his palace of Whitehall. They are thought to have gone extinct in the UK approximately 1500 years ago, The primary reasons for the extinction of brown bears in the UK were overhunting and habitat loss. Humans hunted brown bears extensively for their fur, meat, and as perceived threat to livestock and settlements. Deforestation and agricultural expansion significantly reduced the natural habitats of brown bears, making it difficult for them to find food and shelter, and the brown bear disappeared from our landscape forever. 2. Cave lions. Despite the name, it's thought cave lions didn't really live in caves, but in open plains like their modern ancestors. Cave lions were large and powerful, similar in size to modern lions, but with some distinct differences in build and appearance. The cave lion's muzzle was longer and narrower than that of their modern cousins, and male cave lions did not have manes. Cave lions had very thick undercoats, which became denser in the winter. This adaptation allowed them to survive in the cold, unforgiving conditions of the Ice Age. They preyed on large herbivores, such as deer, horses, and even young mammoths and bear cubs, showcasing their role as apex predators. Fossils of cave lions have been discovered in various locations across the UK, including caves in Devon, Derbyshire, and Yorkshire. Cave lion bones have been found in association with human artifacts, suggesting that early humans may have interacted with or hunted these formidable predators. Cave lions went extinct around 13,000 years ago, toward the end of the last Ice Age, which has led some scientists to believe that their extinction was connected to climate change. The exact causes of their extinction are still debated, but likely factors include climate change and also human activity. The warming climate at the end of the Ice Age led to changes in habitats and a reduction in the large prey animals that cave lions depended on, and increased human presence and hunting pressure could have also contributed to their decline. We know through prehistoric art that humans coexisted with cave lions, and there is evidence to suggest we used their skin and fur for clothing and shelter, so perhaps we were responsible after all. 3. Dalmatian Pelican. The Dalmatian pelican reflects a time when huge areas of the UK would have been covered in reed beds, marshes, and large, shallow stretches of water, like the Danube Delta in Romania, where this species still lives today. This huge bird is by a slight margin the largest of all pelican species, and one of the largest living flying bird species. It measures 5 feet 3 inches to 6 feet in length, 7 to 15 kilograms in weight, and a massive 8 to 11 feet 6 inches in wingspan, and their flocks fly in graceful synchronicity. It was very common in Britain 12,000 years ago, and bones have been found in peat bogs in Norfolk, East Yorkshire, and Somerset from the Bronze and Iron Ages. Their diet primarily consisted of fish, which they caught using their large, pouched bills. They were and still are highly skilled hunters, often working in groups to herd fish into shallow waters for easier capture. While some populations of Dalmatian pelicans are migratory, moving between breeding and wintering grounds, it is likely that the UK populations were somewhat resident due to the relatively mild climate and availability of resources year-round. The decline of the Dalmatian pelican in the UK is believed to have occurred around the Roman period, approximately 2,000 years ago. Over time, human activities such as hunting and habitat modification through drainage of wetlands and agricultural expansion led to the decline and eventual extinction of Dalmatian pelicans in the UK. The species was likely hunted for its feathers and meat, and the loss of suitable nesting and feeding grounds further contributed to its disappearance. Interestingly, there have been rare modern sightings of Dalmatian pelicans in the UK, which are thought to be individuals from wild populations or escapees from captivity, indicating the species' ability to survive in the region's current climate if given the opportunity. 4. Wolves. Wolves were once present in Great Britain. Early writing from Roman and later Saxon chronicles indicate that wolves appear to have been extraordinarily numerous on the island. They were often mentioned in historical records, literature, and folklore. Scottish folklore tells of how an old man in Morayshire, named MacQueen of Finhorn, killed the last wolf in 1743. A 12th century English monk named Galfred, whilst writing about the miracles of St Cuthbert 7 centuries earlier, observed the wolves were so numerous in Northumbria that it was virtually impossible for even the richest flockmasters to protect their sheep. despite employing many men for the job. It is thought that they arrived at the end of the last ice age, approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. Packs of wolves crossed the land bridge from Europe following the migrating herds of deer, elk, boar, and other grazing animals and proliferated throughout the UK. It feasted on these animals as well as aurochs, bison, saiga, antelope, and many other mammals that once thrived across Britain. Wolves were widely distributed throughout the UK, inhabiting regions including the Scottish Highlands, the forests of England, and the mountains of Wales, as well as wetlands, marshes. While less common, wolves could even be found in the grasslands and open fields. They played a crucial role as apex predators in the UK's ecosystem. They helped control the populations of large herbivores, which in turn maintained the health of forest and grassland environments. In caves, remains of wolves suggest they were domesticated by humans as early pets for protection and help during hunts. Despite our relationship with them and especially their ancestors, dogs, wolves were not tolerated and gradually killed off. Alongside hunting and habitat loss, organized eradication efforts are what eventually killed off these formidable predators. Throughout medieval and early modern periods, organized efforts, including bounties and systematic hunts, aimed to eradicate wolves from the British Isles. Historical accounts from as early as 1,000 years ago mention wolf hunting as a way to pay tribute to kings and nobles, as wolves were considered a danger to people and a threat to livestock, and their existence was at odds with expanding animal farming landscapes. There are even records of woods being burnt to the ground to deter wolves. In 1281, Edward I ordered the extermination of all wolves in England. And soon after, by the late medieval period, they were very rare, and it is generally accepted that wolves were extinct in England by the 15th century. They went on to survive longer in Scotland, but not by much. And it is accepted that they went extinct in either the 17th or the 18th century, depending on reports. 5. Grey whales. Grey whales once inhabited the North Atlantic Ocean, including coastal waters around the UK. They were part of a broader population that extended throughout the North Atlantic before becoming extinct in this region. Evidence suggests that these whales migrated through UK waters as part of their seasonal feeding and breeding cycles. Now, grey whales are found predominantly in shallow coastal waters of the North Pacific Ocean, rarely venturing more than 20 to 30 kilometers offshore. Grey whales are benthic feeders, meaning they primarily feed on small organisms found in the sediment of the ocean floor. Their diet includes amphipods, small crustaceans, and other invertebrates. Grey whales do not have teeth and hunt seabed creatures by rolling over on one side, then swimming slowly along, sucking up sediment and the small creatures that live in it. They then sieve out the water and silt through their baleen, trapping the food behind. They can stay underwater for around 20 to 30 minutes and can live up to 70 years of age. These large whales can grow to about 49 feet long and weigh approximately 9,000 pounds. Grey whales are generally solitary or found in small groups, especially outside of the breeding season. They come together in large numbers primarily during migration and in breeding lagoons. Now, grey whales are found predominantly in shallow coastal waters of the North Pacific Ocean, rarely venturing more than 20 to 30 kilometers offshore. The extinction of grey whales was driven by intense whaling and over-exploitation by humans. Starting from the medieval period and intensifying during the early modern period, grey whales were heavily hunted for their blubber, oil, and baleen. Whaling was conducted on an industrial scale, which drastically reduced their populations. Also, improved whaling techniques and technologies in the 17th and 18th centuries allowed whalers to catch more whales efficiently, further accelerating their decline. The absence of effective conservation measures during the critical periods of their decline ensured that the North Atlantic population of grey whales could not recover, leading to their eventual extinction in the region. But they did not go globally extinct. Now, grey whales are found predominantly in shallow coastal waters of the North Pacific Ocean. 6. Woolly mammoth. Woolly mammoths roamed the British Isles during the Pleistocene epoch, particularly thriving during the last ice age. Numerous fossils of woolly mammoths have been found all across the UK. Woolly mammoths first entered Britain around 190,000 to 150,000 years ago. It is believed that they existed alongside steppe mammoths for a short time, before replacing them to become the only mammoth species present in Britain. They are especially known from the last Ice Age, around 75 to 14,000 years ago. During the Ice Age, the UK was covered in vast expanses of tundra and steppe, providing a suitable habitat for woolly mammoths. These environments offered the cold conditions and grassy plains that mammoths needed for grazing. They had several adaptations to survive the harsh, cold climates of Ice Age Britain. Known for their size, fur, and imposing tusks, they stood about 10 to 12 feet tall and weighed 6 to 8 tons. They had a yellowish-brown undercoat about 1 inch thick, beneath a coarser outer covering of dark brown hair that grew more than 27 inches long in some individuals. Under the extremely thick skin was a layer of insulating fat, at times 3 inches thick, showcasing amazing adaptation to the bitter cold. Woolly mammoths typically reached 60 years of age. Early humans in the UK, both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, coexisted with woolly mammoths. Evidence suggests that these humans hunted mammoths for food, used their bones and tusks for tools and shelter, and even depicted them in ancient art. The demise of the great woolly mammoth in the UK, which happened around 14,000 years ago, was caused by a combination of climate change and human hunting. The end of the Ice Age brought significant warming, leading to habitat changes that mammoths could not adapt to quickly enough, along with increased hunting pressure from expanding human populations, further contributed to their decline. 7. Great Auk. The Great Auk, a large, flightless bird, once thrived in the coastal regions and rocky islands of the UK. These birds preferred these remote, rocky islands that offered protection from predators and human disturbance. The body of the Great Auk was approximately 75 centimeters long. The wings, which were used in swimming underwater, were less than 15 centimeters long. The large black bill bore 8 or more transverse grooves. The bird stood erect on land. It had a black back and head, a white front, and a large white spot between the bill and eye. In Britain, they were primarily found on rocky islands and coastal areas. These birds preferred these remote rocky islands that offered protection from predators and human disturbance. Their habitat was characterized by cold ocean waters, rich in fish, which were their primary food source. They fed on a variety of marine life, primarily fish such as capelin and sandlance, which they caught while swimming underwater. Great auks nested in large colonies on rocky shores, laying a single egg on bare rock. Both parents participated in incubating the egg and feeding the chick. They were highly social, often found in large groups both on land and at sea. Their extinction was solely related to human hunting. Their inability to fly made the great auk utterly defenseless, and they were killed by rapacious hunters for their meat, eggs, feathers, and bait, particularly during the early 1800s. Enormous numbers were captured, the birds often being driven up a plank and slaughtered on their way into the hold of a ship. The last known specimens were killed in June 1844 at Elde Island, Iceland. About 80 great auks and a like number of their eggs are preserved in museums. 8. Lynx. Lynx have been found dating back to the Pleistocene epoch, indicating that they roamed the British Isles for tens of thousands of years and making it through the Ice Age. Archaeological remains unearthed in Kinsey Cave, Yorkshire, tells us they even persisted into the early Middle Ages, making them one of Britain's most successful ever predators, and are still thriving all across northern and eastern Europe, as well as parts of Asia. Lynx are typically about the size of a Labrador dog, with long legs and webbed paws, ideal for navigating the snow. They have a thick, greyish-brown fur with black spots that vary in prominence. Their belly is completely white. This species has pointed black-tipped ears to improve its hearing, as well as a thick ruff of white hair around its neck. It also has a black-tipped bobtail. The lynx stands at around 60 to 75 centimeters tall and weighs around 15 to 30 kilograms. They are solitary and territorial animals. They establish large territories which they mark and defend against other lynx. The UK's prehistoric landscape, covered in extensive woodlands, provided an ideal habitat for the forest-dwelling predator. It fed predominantly on roe deer where available. It also would have ate red deer, birds, rabbits, hares, rodents, and foxes, relying on stealth and the element of surprise to catch their prey. They used their keen eyesight and hearing to locate prey, often stalking it before making a swift and powerful attack. They're able to spot a mouse up to 250 feet away. Lynx typically breed in late winter. The mother raises the kittens alone, providing them with food and teaching them essential survival skills until they are independent, usually around 10 months old. In the wild, lynx can live up to 17 years, though many do not reach this age due to various natural challenges. Their extinction was primarily due to habitat loss, as forests were cleared for agriculture alongside human hunting, especially for its fur. There have been discussions and pilot projects aimed at reintroducing the Eurasian lynx to certain parts of the UK, such as Scotland and the North York Moors, to restore ecological balance and biodiversity. 9. The European tree frog. No larger than a 2p coin, the common tree frog was recorded as early as 1646 in Britain and is able to survive in our cold and sometimes freezing climate. Archaeological remains go back hundreds of thousands of years. One of the key records of tree frogs in England comes from the 17th century from the polymath Sir Thomas Browne. The little frog's of an excellent parrot green that usually sits on trees and bushes and is therefore called Ranunculus viridis or arboreus. This is undoubtedly the European tree frog. The frogs are known for their dawn chorus, in which their bright burblings sound almost like toy motorboats. They are still found across Europe in similar altitudes, such as just over the water in northern France. They thrive in slow-moving or still freshwater habitats like ponds, lakes, marshes, and slow rivers. These habitats typically have abundant aquatic vegetation, providing food and shelter. They typically measure between 12 and 38 centimeters in length, with a domed, dark-colored carapace with yellow speckles. It possesses webbed feet suitable for swimming and claws for climbing and digging. The European tree frog is both adapted to life in water and on land. For water, they have streamlined shells and powerful limbs for swimming, and they spend significant time on land, basking in the sun and laying eggs in terrestrial nests. Their extinction was caused by the drainage and conversion of wetlands for agriculture, urban development, and other uses drastically reduced the natural habitats suitable for the European tree frog. Remaining wetland areas became fragmented and isolated, making it difficult for populations to sustain themselves and breed successfully. But reintroduction efforts are underway. Conservationists are hoping to re-establish populations of these small amphibians hundreds of years after they died out in the wild. 10. Hippopotamus. Saving the most surprising one for last, hippopotamuses roamed Britain during the Pleistocene epoch. Fossil evidence reveals that these massive creatures inhabited the region as far back as 1 million years ago. The key period when hippos were present in Britain is what's called the Ionian Interglacial, which occurred approximately 130,000 to 115,000 years ago. During this time, the climate in Britain was significantly warmer than it is today, providing suitable conditions for hippos. This warm climate allowed for the development of rich river valleys and wetlands that were ideal habitats for hippos. Fossils of hippos have been discovered in areas such as the Thames Valley and East Anglia, indicating their presence during this period. Hippopotamuses are primarily herbivores. In Pleistocene Britain, they would have grazed on a variety of grasses and other vegetation found near water sources. They typically feed at night, venturing out of the water to graze on land, and then returning to the water during the day to keep cool and avoid predators. Like their modern counterparts, Pleistocene hippos were likely social animals, living in groups known as pods. These pods provided protection and social interaction. Hippos are well adapted to a semi-aquatic life, with eyes, ears, and nostrils positioned on top of their heads, allowing them to see and breathe while mostly submerged. Their thick skin helped protect them from the sun and potential predators. This adaptation would have been equally useful in the varied climates of Pleistocene Britain. For once, it seems humans had no impact on the extinction of the hippopotamus of Britain. As the climate cooled and the next glacial period began, the habitat of the hippopotamus would have changed drastically. The reduction in temperature and the disappearance of suitable wetland habitats made it difficult for them to survive. The shift from warm interglacial periods to colder glacial periods reduced the availability of the warm, wet environments that hippos needed. That was 10 amazing animals that once called the British Isles home. It's fascinating to reflect on our rich history and the diverse wildlife that once roamed our lands. Sadly, it also highlights the significant loss of fauna we have experienced over time. Britain has been home to an incredible array of animals throughout its history. Honourable mentions that didn't make today's top 10 list include straight-tusked elephants, who went extinct about 50,000 years ago. Neanderthals, our cousins, sadly seem to go extinct around 40,000 years ago. The cave hyena, Arctic lemmings, and the Arctic fox, who all unfortunately died out towards the end of the last ice age, around 11 to 12,000 years ago. Animals that have been discussed or are in the process of being reintroduced to the UK include aurochs, elk, bison, beavers, lynxes, golden eagles, both red and roe deer, pine martens, and wild boars. But an estimated 2,600 wild boars are thought to be living in several breeding populations from farm escapees, so you could say this has already begun. The largest of these is in the Forest of Dean, but wild boar are also present in parts of southeast and southwest England, southeast Wales, and northwest Scotland. It would be truly amazing to witness these magnificent creatures become a part of British wildlife once again. As we reflect on this rich past, we are reminded of the importance of conservation and the need to protect the remaining wildlife. The stories of these extinct animals offer valuable lessons in ecological stewardship and the interconnectedness of all life forms. By understanding and preserving our natural history, we can ensure that future generations will not only remember these magnificent creatures, but also appreciate the delicate balance of nature.